Oh, 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 oh.
Hello, this is Oriana Fox. Thank you for tuning in to the very first episode of Multiple O's, the spin-off podcast for my talk show, The O Show. The O Show is a live performance piece that mines the conventions of daytime TV talk shows for all that they're worth. It features artists and other experts who have little to no difficulty spilling the beans about their lives and opinions, especially when they defy norms and conventions. So if you're interested in candid confessions, nonconformity, creativity, and mental health, you come to the right place. Hi there. Welcome to the first full-length episode of Multiple O's. I'm your host, Oriana, and I'm an artist with a PhD in self-disclosure. This week, I'm talking with the artist, activist, and author Hamja Ahsan. Hamja is an advocate for introvert rights who adamantly refuses to recover from his shyness. But he likes to go around talking about it in front of large audiences. In his book, Shy Radicals, which documents the political demands of shy, quiet, and autistic spectrum peoples, he describes talk show formats as having, quote, paved the way toward extrovert, supremacist, imperialist domination, unquote. This is perhaps why his appearance on the 2018 O Show episode entitled You're Only as Sick as Your Secrets was laugh out loud funny. I'm so pleased to have him back in the hot seat today to talk about all things shy. Hello. Sorry. Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Hello.
This is where we chat, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah. I was just immediately thinking about the difference between TV show formats and radio and podcasts, I guess, and listening. Just as you're speaking, I was thinking of the time in which Jerry Springer was on Desert Island Discs on Radio 4, and he came across as such a sensitive, deep, introspective soul. And that was just the effect of Radio 4.
So is that what you were feeling about me? About that I'm a deep, introspective soul? No. I must explain that in preparation for today, I asked Hamja to watch an episode of The O Show from 2017. That is, before he and I had even met. The episode, which addresses shyness and social anxiety, is called Killer Conversations, and it's just been released on the worldwide broadcasting service, YouTube. You can watch The O Show on Killer Conversations at your leisure on the Oriana Fox YouTube channel or orianafox.com. Perhaps I asked Hamja to watch this episode because I'm a glutton for punishment. In other words, I had the feeling that he would find it highly offensive, not least because it encourages viewers to overcome rather than take pride in their shyness. I feel very bad about having tried to convert shy people and about buying into the value system of the extrovert supremacy class. My interests lie in what it takes or what it means to fly in the face of societal norms and values. And yet, I failed to fully question this particular ideal. So thank you, Hamja, for bringing that to my attention. I'm terrified, of course, dying to know what you thought of Killer Conversations.
I was terrified when I watched it, actually. The first 30 seconds, if I was in that live audience, I would have run away. I felt really...
Yeah, you can see that in looks on people's faces sometimes, when you see the audience.
I wouldn't have been able to survive, though. It was so in your face, the dance sequence at the start. I was just so, I just felt really shy.
Even watching it at home.
And then you did the mashed potato with everyone. I was like, oh God, I would have just, would have just frozen up. And I think there's a certain level of, intolerance to... this sort of, in-your-face liberalism. I think the reason is that I just have this solemn, melancholic... Say if I sat there with my head in my hands or staring into space, what would I... often in, private view, jollity situations, I just want to talk about terrorism or suicide. And sort of, they're quite banal topics for me. But obviously that's going to disturb or make me unwelcome, or it wasn't hospitable. But that's how I felt. I felt really out of place. It's I can't describe it. It's I think it's a certain level of it is predicated on like cultural difference. So I am, a lot of my family and the people I grew up with are like quite pious Muslims. I don't know where they'd quite fit in. There's a certain pattern I've seen in migration in art world areas. So it's more classically seen in like Tower Hamlet. So you'll see this sort of like Muslim population from a sort of former colony of Britain. So the Bangladeshi community surround this art world in East London. And obviously, those two worlds don't often intersect, or but that so I'm going in the meandering thing off into the thing. And then I just noticed, and I noticed those patterns in other areas of the world.
So it was like a culture shock kind of thing, like
culture shock's not
just
quite
reaffirming this kind of boundary between.
Yeah, I
or the proximity, but yet the distance.
But I don't know. It's like obviously my parents wouldn't enjoy it, but it's like, but then would your parents enjoy it?
My mom was there.
Oh, was she?
Yeah.
Did she like it?
Yeah, my dad likes my work too. She was there. She had a good time, I think.
But I don't think, like as I say in my book, I don't think these like static racial demographics are like adequate descriptions. Like I relate to things like William Blake, Van Gogh's letters. I think in certain indie music I like the band Low. Do you know them? They're really like they're this trio of Mormons, and they play this real like genre music which is sometimes called slowcore, like really slow, minimal, sincere. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was kind of difference in taste came up with when you were on the show, because I picked a song and you found it.
But then on the other hand, like if I want, like at the moment there's a film being made of my book and it's in production.
The film about Hamja has since been released. I have information about it in the show notes if you're curious.
And the film's quite.
And you said you wish it was directed by John Waters. And
I do wish the film was.
Huge fan of John Waters.
Yeah,
so
I do
there's
wish
some
the film.
overlap between.
But I think as John Waters has this degree of like knowingness and like the particular irony operates in his work, and self-awareness and self-consciousness is the film of my books. It's quite a solemn, serious portrait of my depressive episodes and my campaigning for like my brother when he was in prison, and it doesn't have the like human provocation and irony of the book at all.
Yeah. Well, do you see the parody in my work, or you just experience it as alien?
I feel really bad. It's weird because I'm doing this interview now in your like everyday clothes, and even when I met you today across the road and you're wearing the same shades of like grey and dark green that I wear.
For me, because I find it always so weird how much people buy into the character, like they believe this character.
Yeah.
Like I was at an event once where I introduced my work and I just put the wig on. I didn't do makeup. I just had the wig on. I had my firstborn baby. He was like a few weeks old. And then when they finally saw the baby with me afterwards without the wig, someone was like, "I'd like to speak to the mother of the child." Yeah. Like as if it wasn't me. Yeah. And I was like, I'm... Yeah, so people really buy into
Every time, though, it gets me. Every time I see you, like, outside of your makeup and shoulder pads and peroxide, it does, like... Yeah, it's still like a shock or, like some... Yeah.
Yeah. So...
Is that you?
Yeah, so I feel like, isn't the parody of my work obvious? But I guess it's got this weird... I don't know, maybe it's hard for other people to read, whereas I think the parody is so obvious, or I think it's so obvious that I'm not very good at it. Like, my shyness comes across in certain places. Like, for example, when I ask for the volunteers, I don't ask what their names are. That's awkward. I mean, most people would be like, immediately ask what their name is. And I don't do that because I'm so nervous and I'm not the type of person who would think about it. Like, I don't have these, I don't know these social niceties. Like, I'm not very good at them.
Sure.
And I also forget to thank people. It's been awful. Like one time, this person came on and spoke about this very intense project that was like extremely difficult for him to do. And I just and I was so thrilled to have him on the show. Like I really wanted him to be there. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate any of it. It was just that I completely was like so nervous that I just didn't even thank him when the interview was over. And I just moved on to the next person. It was so awkward. Then I had to go back and be like, oh my God, I realized I didn't thank you. You know, it was just so, yeah. So I think people watching the show see that. Obviously, when you watch the edited thing, you don't see it because I cut a lot of those things out.
Yeah.
Although I started keeping more of the mess ups because my camera crew always tells me they like it when I mess up. And I never really know what they mean by that. And I can't stand it. I can't stand watching it and seeing myself mess up. But that's my, as I talk about on the show in the opening monologue, that I feel like that is my main insecurity, is like being thought of as stupid. Because obviously some level I believe that I'm stupid. And right. And so that I fear this being confirmed in other people's perception of me. So I will not like admit to not knowing things. And, you know, it's really bad because
I think of my shyness more as a structure of feeling. It's like, some people in that room want to do the mashed potato, but I just don't feel it in my limbs and body, and that's my zone of feeling and sensing. And
I feel that way a lot too. Like in high school, or you know, like a dance or in a club. Like I definitely would have that same feeling.
I wouldn't go
I
in the
really
first place.
only like I probably wouldn't go either, but I mean, on the occasions when I do, it would take a lot to get me on the dance floor. And I love dancing. And so, like, I can dance in my work because I've set it up. I've picked the song I want to dance to, and I've picked the moves I'm going to be doing. Whereas if it's just, like, improvisational and I'm not choosing the music, I will sometimes just be like, even if I like the song, I might not get up. Because it's just, sometimes there's that, like, kind of thing sets in, and
I mean, that particular form of unstage dancing as well is just not something I just associate with like dread. Like any type of dancing I like is like careful, high culture choreography. But like, I almost like a dread of this. I don't know to what extent it's like the type of parents I have, and like even I don't know which collective category to take, like, because for example, I'm from Bengal. Bengali cinema is very particular. It's very like, it's almost like Iranian cinema. It's very sort of slow, meditative. Like the film I watched with my mum when I was a child, Bata Pachali, which was part of Satyajit Ray's Api trilogy, and it has like nothing happens in the film. You know, you watch like this rural area and you watch the like fireflies in the pond and like the train looking like this sort of Japanese ink painting, and it's sort of just slow meditative film when nothing happens, and the poetics of that, and that's a huge contrast to like Bollywood, like but Bollywood cinema would like eat up like that Calcutta art film cinema, which is the best cinema in the world, by the way. And then Punjabi is like you know, Bhangra dancing and like dhol drums and these peacock feather type hats. That's a hyper extrovert supremacist form, and that tends to dominate like British Asian like definitions. So I don't know, and there's obviously and then I remember when my parents and I went to, I got shortlisted for this award, the Liberty Human Rights Award, and it was a big award ceremony in Queen Elizabeth Hall, and there were a lot of celebrities there, like Benedict Cumberbatch and Doreen Lawrence, and it was almost like a ballroom type atmosphere. My parents just sat at the side of this place, and that's what I would have done. And I don't know how much that's typical of, I don't know, like a practice in Muslims from Bengal, like not partaking. That just wasn't anything I'd grown up with or remotely had. You know, they never had like alcohol in the house, and that's normal and banal, and no one in my family drinks alcohol. So that in and of itself changes that entire like almost soberness. Even like weddings are quite sober, like even in comparison to like even other Muslim diasporic groups. So I was briefly engaged to like a Jordanian Arab, and like their weddings are tight. They like throw knives and they do this like wiggly dancing. So But I don't know how much to invoke that cultural difference because, as I said, I like the sensitive white man type music is something I strongly identified with. And the first things I identified with while developing individual identity and personality. And like, I mean, it's done on a globalized scale with like Kurt Cobain's particular sensibility, and a lot of people gravitating towards that. I guess a generation before that would have been like The Cure or Echo and the Bunnymen. Could you imagine like, I don't know, like Robert Smith on the O Show or Killer Conversation? A bunch of Cure fans, like, just the crowd, and you told them to do the mashed potato.
Yeah, that would be absurd, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I'd gravitate towards these things like, I mean, I don't have no, like doom metal, and it's just totally like negative. It's talking about like death, and it's just really slow sludge. Like, I don't know. It's like that's the zone of mind I'm in. Like,
right. Quite funny actually to be like
that. Your show's so positive. That show, that's so. But I just wonder how much is embedded in like nationalities and like you know, like when you go USA, USA, like that's obviously extrovert supremacist, right? And it's obviously embodied in them. But I wondered, like, because I totally didn't relate to that show as a shy person, and then my shy friend Helen, who's more like she'd describe herself as a computer nerd, and she's like me, she's a bit overweight and clumsy, and finds it difficult to make friends. We both watched it together, and we just like, this is for shy people. We're like, oh. But then I thought about American politics generally. So I thought about, you know, the Democrats are considered on the left in America, but by British or Scandinavian standards, they're like the right or the right. So it's like the entire thing is shifted. Yes. So I thought maybe your conception of shy is measured from the same thing. Right. So it's like, yeah.
No, I actually. Yeah.
So maybe it's like a Hillary Clinton conception of shyness or something.
Yeah, that's so funny. Because reading this book by sociologist Susie Scott, Shyness and Society.
I consider Susie Scott like the Edward Said of shyness.
Yeah, I did feel like, I'm not nearly as shy as as these people. You know, I feel like I'm on the, you know.
To me, you just pass that thing when you just say I enjoy dancing. It's like, it's just taken. It's also taken as like it's such a, like, we live in such an normative extrovert supremacy as well, that it's taken as like words like party and dancing that I immediately associate with happiness. There's people like me associate with like terror, like.
Yeah, so I'm maybe on the spectrum of shyness. Maybe my shyness is.
I don't know if it is a spectrum, but I just associate with like some form of coercion. That the whole atmosphere of that show felt oppressive. It felt like the office Christmas party as like.
Oh God, yeah, like yeah. Well, to be fair, that's why I wanted to introduce it and explain what the show was really originally conceived to be about. It was about conversation starters.
Yeah,
that was the main, and it was like Phoebe Davis's project with the nails. I thought I liked the idea of like people sitting intimately doing each other's nails, having a conversation, and then that being a visible cue.
Because if you compare that to like men going for a pint, it's like a different.
Yeah, so and then having this visible cue that's kind of strange, like a face on your fingers, and that being something that prompts a conversation
with eyes.
And I love that idea. To clarify, I'm referring here to Phoebe Davis's project called Influences, which she made from 2013 to 2015. Yeah, unfortunately, she didn't want to talk about that project because it's like, maybe you'll one day become that way about shy radicals. Like, I've talked about it so much.
I do worry it might be like my Creep by Radiohead. Like, Radiohead don't play Creep because everyone wants them to play Creep.
I know.
Like, sort of, it's like my curse. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. If only I was so lucky to have something that was such a success. People ask me to talk about it over and over again. I get sick of talking about it.
I just wondered because that is all I do.
Yeah, so it's a question. Maybe in like a few years' time, you'll be like, I never want to speak about that. But anyway, so that's how Phoebe was about that particular project. She didn't want to talk about it. It was very awkward.
I'm really interested in it. I'm going to ask about it. I've spoken with Phoebe before, actually, at this event.
But she actually is quite shy.
Is she?
Didn't she seem so on the...
No, not at all. I watched the whole thing again.
She seemed shy.
I watched the whole thing, and I seen her speak before, thinking this is not my family or the like people.
Oh,
I've
maybe
grown up
compared to
with.
Brian and Marcia, she seems shy to me. I'm speaking here about the artists Brian Lobel and Marcia Farquhar, who were both interviewed on Killer Conversations.
Yeah.
Well, Marcia claims that she's shy. I mean, she says
People
she
say
has-
I'm not shy, so like,
Yeah, I know. So there you go. So there's the paradox of shy vocality that Susie Scott talks about. Like,
Yeah.
there are certain contexts in which shy people can.
I deal with that question. Like, firstly, I have a very straight answer to that, which is that there's only two reasons I speak in public, which is one, I have to read lots of books about it, and two, I have to cry about it in my bedroom. Right? That's the only condition. But then I just think there's different types of public speech. So, I mean, Greta Thunberg, who I identify with strongly, she had selective mutism and didn't find it easy to make friends. And I think there's particular types of public speech, like the MTV presenter, or like the Oprah, or like the weatherman or the air hostess. They're like particular types of public speech. Even contemporary politics as it is, they're particular types of synthetic public speech. If something's spoken from like the position of like pure sincerity, from like a cave, a head that's been in a cave for a long time, and then that comes out into the light, I don't regard that as extrovert speech or extrovert supremacy speech. And I've been tracing that in history, so I'm very interested in this figure from Irish anti-colonial history called Patrick Pearse, who I've just been to Dublin, and there's a huge celebration around the Easter Rising. So that was the first major like anti-colonial revolt in 1916, which was a failed revolt, but inspired everyone from like Marcus Garvey, William Du Bois, people in Bengal, like around the world. It was like the spark, this revolt. But he's retrospectively diagnosed as autistic spectrum. He was extremely awkward, extremely shy, but did these revolutionary militant speeches which could get right at the heart of like the most evil power in the world, which was like 90% of the world being subjected to European colonialism. And even now his speeches are like they're insightful. They could probably be taken as like they'll probably be prosecuted under terrorism laws or something like that. And they're even more blood-stirring than like Malcolm X speeches. But he did all that as a shy, quiet, introvert person. And then he set up this school in Dublin, and it was like a school for sensitive boys. So it was both a form of revolutionary anti-colonial education and like a place where you could be sensitive. And I have this figure in my book called the Sensitive G, which is like a cross between like the hardened like gangster rapper who you don't fuck with, and like the sensitive, poetic, introvert person. And I almost thought there was a certain embodiment of that within Irish republicanism. In that, like the IRA were the most ruthless terror force in the world, and yet they had this tradition of like poetry and like my favorite song of all time is a song written in the H block called Song for Marcella, which is about Bobby Sands, and it just sounds like a 1990s sensitive white man Seattle angst song. Like I beg anyone to like Google or look it on YouTube. It's so beautiful and moving in that way.
Maybe someone could do a cover. Some kind of merging of those two.
Yeah. I don't know if I got completely off tangent, but I think of shyness as a certain type of identification, like they're my type of people.
Yeah.
And that a lot of it's like what I'm supposed to identify with. That like my tribe politically is like the British left and the people behind Jeremy Corbyn and like the grassroots movements that support that. But I very strongly identify with T.S. Eliot and the love song of Alfred J. Prufrock, which is embodiment of this sort of shy sensibility. And I view T.S. Eliot as embodiment of this deep, shy sensibility. And then there's a huge following for the Japanese quasi-fascist writer, Yukio Mishima. And that's this very particular... it's almost like Yukio Mishima is like Edward Scissorhands or like the way I came across Yukio Mishima was through Richie James Edwards of the Manic Street Preachers, like this sort of angsty, sensitive white man 1990s music. But just think about clinical identifications of shyness. Like a lot of people get referred to clinics, clinical psychologists and psychiatry because they're too shy, they're too quiet, they're not speaking. No one gets referred to like a clinical psychologist because
they're too loud.
Yeah, they speak too much. Yeah,
I do try to. Yeah,
it's immediately connected with pathologization and deviance and not functioning normally.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody who was really extremely vocal might, I don't know, to the point where they're, I don't know, antisocially vocal. I think that might be. I think it's possible.
Possibly.
I don't know.
Employment though favors those type of people.
Yes. Yeah.
I felt really aggrieved that I would apply for the visitor services jobs in the Royal Festival Hall, and I'd be rejected year after year after year. And I've been going to that place as a quiet person in my early teens, like for decades. And then, so I felt some notion of customer service, and it's like they're saying I can't serve people like myself. Like I can't serve people who like the quiet of like the poetry library there or like the galleries there. It's like that's the type of person I wanted to meet when I went there. And there's like they're discriminating against me because I have my shy sensibility.
Do they literally say that to you? You're too quiet. I mean, what is how they detect? Like in an interview setting, you'll have to.
There's
speak,
a lot of tests that you do. I mean, when I was in the National Portrait Gallery, you had to sit in a circle and then pretend you were on the moon, and then work out how you'd get off the moon together. And there were people at the sides with clipboards assessing your assertiveness skills and body posture. And then you were made to watch Devil Wears Prada and do a test around it. So that's literal. Like the thing is, when I did that test for that employment at Royal Festival Hall, I'd done that exact same test before at the job centre. So it's actually this very specific type of. It's called soft skills, right? I actually once went for a job at Shrek World. There was like a new theme park around Shrek.
Yeah.
And weirdly, I got to the highest level of like, I got to the final stage. It was like 3 stages, and you had to like pretend you were like the donkey or something like that. But it's like, and then I just thought, as a child, like it's a fallacy in children's TV, like children's TV presenters and clowns. They were like, yeah, they're like Larian in your face. It's like, but as a child, I wanted to sit in the corner and like draw with my crayons or plasticine. Like I wanted to be left alone, and like I didn't want this. It's just, why is that assumed? That's normative or whatever.
Yeah, I definitely when I was a temp, like in my early 20s, I definitely lost jobs because I wasn't chatty enough. Like, and that's when I was told that I had hide my light under a bushel. Like it was by the temp agency women. They were like, "You hide your light under a bushel." I have no idea what that means. I'm American.
But when I watched that in the show, and it's like, this is a very typical British thing. I was like, I've never heard that before.
Really? Okay. Right.
So it's like,
they're like, because basically my job was like going around giving people coffee, and I just wasn't. I just wasn't the type to be really chatty, and that's what they wanted.
Shy Radicals, where I want to be in a coffee shop on my own. I don't want anyone to chat to me. I want to sit there and read a good book. And
it wasn't a coffee shop; it was an office, like where I had to go around and give tea. I don't even know what the job was. Like it was just it was like a nothing job where you just go around and offer people coffee as they're working, or you answer the phone, or I don't even know what the job was. Like I did it for a day. I can't even barely remember it, but I just remember afterwards, like they discontinued me, and I was told I hide my light under a bushel.
I also don't buy into the like simple metaphor of shyness as something sort of hidden or under the table. I think of shyness as a form of extrasensory perception, you're having this ultra feeling or ultra sensitivity. It's like having a radar that senses things in the room that other people don't. And there's times when I haven't trusted my shyness and regretted it thoroughly. So, for example, I made friends with a New Yorker when I spoke at New York University, and we were both fans of Patti Smith. So she was going to take me around Greenwich Village and the place Patti Smith originally had coffee. And she told me Cafe Dante was the place she drinks coffee. And so she had an appointment she had to go off. So I was there on my own in Greenwich Village. And I walked past Cafe Dante like 10 times and I didn't actually go in because I was too shy. And then I broke and distrusted my shyness, telling me that my shyness is formlessness and some false fear or whatever. And then I went, and the Cafe Dante was this new gentrified place where, firstly, it was odd that I walked in there in a hoodie, like, not affluent, not white. And then I walked there and I looked at the menu and they're selling, like, Negronis for, like, $20. And it wasn't the same bohemian place that Patti Smith hung out with. It was bought out, corporatized. And it was, and so like, and then I end up like, just to save face, I end up spending like $20 on this tiny little cocktail that I didn't really want. And I didn't trust my shyness. And therefore I ended up being ripped off, shortchanged, conned, and going into this empty shell of a place.
Yeah.
And there's so many other instances like that. I think like when I'm shy in a room, I'm sensing there's some people in there who are like bastards. And it's like the person who just shakes hands and smiles at everyone maybe doesn't sense it in the same way. I just think there's certain senses you develop through shutting off other parts of yourself. You know, like the blind man who has a cute sense of hearing and like the trained dog who has like a cute sense of smell. Like I feel it's something akin to that. Like just another form of like, you could discipline that sensibility to like empower you or like read things more deeply.
Shy spies.
Yeah.
We blend in.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it could be like, yeah.
I remember actually once in college, like hanging out with somebody who was very popular and like talking to them about their social circle, and he's like, you just sit back and watch everything, like you know everything. Like how do you just sit back and observe, don't you? Like I knew everything about this clique that I was just on the margin of, and I can't even remember the details of what I knew about them, but I just know that really stuck with me, him saying that, like, you just sit back and watch, don't you? Like,
yeah.
But anyway, so it's, even though it advertises itself, my show, for shy people, the opening line of, like, the blurb is, "Are you shy?"
Yeah.
You'll
and
hate
then when
this.
they put up those signs saying you're not worthless, it was just like pop psychology and like, you know, that new hashtag toxic positivity.
Yes. Yeah.
It was like that. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
Yeah. I feel shy in the room because sometimes I feel melancholic or aggrieved or solemn, and then people just get really aggressively, "Oh, why don't you smile?" Like just really like.
Oh, I hate that. Like, I used to get that a lot, walking in the street.
Yeah.
Men would say, "Cheer up, love, it might never happen," or whatever that thing is.
It's funny because
I would get, like, enraged.
Yeah.
I was just, like, I might even, like, start screaming at them, curse them,
Sure.
give them the finger. It's, like, so out of proportion to what they're actually saying to me.
Sure.
But I would just feel, because I wasn't unhappy, like...
Yeah.
The look on my face was just, I'm not smiling at strange men. I don't go around smiling at strange men,
Sure.
you know, like I just don't do that.
I remember seeing that in a museum in New York because it's associated with the women's movement against Trump and stuff, like that slogan of not smiling. But then I felt, I don't know what the word to, I'm going to say disappointed because I strongly identified it with it myself. Then one of my paradigmic ways of, like a lot of behaviours, such as like man-spreading, like when your like legs are open on public transport and you take up a lot of space, or talking over people, men talking over people or saying you don't smile. I feel like they're embodiments of extrovert supremacy and embodiments of toxic positivity. And so I also strongly identify, and I also take I mean, I don't know what position that puts me in. It's like I strongly identify with the figure of Lisa Simpson in The Simpsons. Like, she's my hero. There's no one in public media I identify more strongly with. I think, like, to me, the way I describe Greta Thunberg is she's the best person since Lisa Simpson in the public space. But then Lisa Simpson's also claimed by women exclusive famous thing. But it's like, I don't know, it's the same with like Sylvia Plath. Like, I identify with Sylvia Plath's depressive moments, and like, yeah, but I don't know what I'm allowed to. I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, like, I don't think I ever really identified with Lisa Simpson. I think because I don't think of myself as smart, I can't identify with someone so smart. But yeah.
Do you identify with Homer then?
No, I don't think I'm that dumb.
Anyone? I identify with Homer too. Like, I feel like a cross
Except
between
maybe
the
the
two.
love of donuts or something.
I think, like, in like the situation of depression is that everyone becomes Homer in a depressed state.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But so toxic positivity. I don't really know that much about that. I don't do hashtag things. Yeah. Oh, so. But yeah, so I'll just explain, like, I, had a therapist who was a rational emotive behavior therapist, and she told me about this thing called shame attacking, which is a therapeutic practice within REBT, and I realized that it's something I'd been doing already in my work, and then my whole thesis was about shame attacking, this therapeutic practice, and comparing and contrasting it to speaking truth to power, and Foucault's ideas about parousia, the risky truth telling. It's written about in Susie Scott's book, where she says she's talking about this person Garrison Kaler. Yeah. Anyway, it's written something about shy, like something that's like a shy pride text. Presents a tongue-in-cheek manifesto of shy rights. On the one hand, arguing that shy people have been discriminated against, misunderstood, and oppressed, while on the other hand, recognizing the irony that this group's reluctance to speak up for themselves makes it difficult for others to understand their needs. So, like, for me, my research is all about, like, people defying shame and speaking up about these things that other people would find shameful, and that produces confidence. You may not feel confident, and it may be very risky revealing these truths, and it may be very challenging, but that produces a kind of confidence in you, and therefore that's anti-shy in a way. It's like, so that's why I'm advocating for people to overcome their shyness, because it's a means of expressing maybe but in doing that, neglected to kind of question the normative value of speaking up or confidence. Yeah? Does that make any sense? Oh. So, yeah.
But, I mean, you have particular forums in mind when we think of, like, speaking up. So I often use the format of the long table, which is the form in experimental theatre developed by Lois Weaver, where anyone can turn up table, and sometimes people draw on the table or they block out. And the way that's been readopted by the neurodiversity movement.
I've actually done an O show at Goldsmiths with the ableist discussion group, ableism discussion group. We did an O show about, it was about imposter syndrome and like academophobia, it was called. It was about like kind of fear of living up to this kind of ideal of the perfect student or whatever. And it was started like an O show where I interviewed one former student, and Wendy Dryden, and then it opened up to the long table. Like there was two parts, and the second part was the long table. Anyway, go on.
But the long table opens up
communication
in a way that other forms of assembly and address and like public
You say that, but I've been
doesn't.
at long tables and still felt just as shy and not willing to participate. Like I remember, actually, it was at that same event where Phoebe Davis spoke about her project. That it was like a feminist event at Live Art Development Agency. She spoke, and maybe one other person spoke, and then it opened into a long table. And I remember like adamant, like really, really wanting to speak and contribute and having something to say, and then going up and sitting at the table. And then just leaving.
I mean, there's variation.
Without saying anything and without even writing anything. Like, still feeling so shy and unable to, to get anything. And I had to leave because I had a young baby at home and I had to get back and I couldn't really fully participate. Anyway.
Oh, maybe you just negated and invalidated my point.
Sorry?
But it was just, it was more like, it did, I found there was lots of people who would just draw elaborate mazes and patterns and puzzles and doodles on the table, and it would open up. Actually,
I didn't mean to negate it because actually that event was prior to me actually employing it in my own work at Goldsmiths and finding that it was really good at getting students to speak up and participate.
But I was just thinking of taking it out of the format of experimental theatre and putting it into either it would just be standard regular communication, like going to the pub or having a coffee. Imagine that. Like, how would that change societies? And then I was thinking of parliaments and debate chambers and select committees and these institutions of democracy. What would it open up? Like, what would it... There are... shyness is something that's been with me since, childhood. It's a childhood, trait that when I was a child I had really long hair because I was too shy to get a haircut and they used to call me Mowgli, like Mowgli from the Jungle Book. I'd get obviously bullied and then I look back at some of my earlier photographs as a 9 and 10-year-old child with this long hair with a lot of affection, and I thought I was quite a cute child. But the hairdresser at the time, there was a certain oppressive dynamic in it. So, my parents would go to this. There were white men in their 50s, and they'd always have a page-free nude girly calendar in the background, and they'd put on country music radio, and they'll just talk about Muslims and Asians as if we weren't there in a very derogatory manner. And my dad would quite just smile it away. He wouldn't really. And I was like, no wonder I dreaded going to that place. He thought of me as second class or. And then in the 90s, the later generation of Muslims set up their own hairdressers, which are funny again because I know they were done without irony. So you'd have these Pakistani men and they'd have pictures of the Backstreet Boys, these boy bands, these quite cat-looking boy bands, and it's weird. And in the 1990s, before 9/11, there was very open talk about things like the Mujahideen and the Bosnian war. The Muslims in Bosnia were being ethnically cleansed, and there were people from era who went to fight for them. And would openly recruit, and they talk about the Afghan Taliban government, and they talk about the war in Chechnya, where Russia was again ethnically cleansing a population aspiring to independence, whilst cutting your hair. So there are all these taboo subjects, and then I go there, and I still go there. I still go there to. It was also because it's really cheap. It's £5. It's ridiculously cheap, and they have that immigrant ethic where they probably live on top of the shop and have a sort of family business or whatever, and then I felt this sense of total comfort in there. And there's also this anti-aesthetic thing, it wasn't representative of any aesthetic choice almost, but I didn't feel shy, but then I did start to feel shy there when I wasn't because they have their own ideals of men and what I should be doing, so I was entering into my mid-30s and I wasn't married or what, I don't know, whatever, a stabilised nuclear family thing. So then that would make me feel shy. There were points also when after my first major depressive episode, I just wasn't in education and I wasn't in employment and I didn't really do very much. So the small talk thing of asking me what I do and stuff, just entering this field of like dread. I don't know if me not going for a haircut just totally can be accepted as like the disabling form of shyness.
It's funny because my partner has the same issue. He hates getting his hair cut. He cuts his own hair, actually.
Really?
Yeah. And he cuts my hair and cuts everybody's hair because we all hate going to the... we all have that in common, but he's really much more extroverted than I am. Like, he's really good with people. Like, he knows all the neighbors and...
It's just, I've just all these problems.
But that thing you can't do. It's weird. It's
it's just you said that really good with people straight away. Like, it's just sometimes shyness can be really good with people.
Yeah.
To me, like, there's a phrase, again, I saw on a Facebook meme. It's called, like, about being fluent in silence. Like, sometimes silence can be a compliment.
Yeah.
Because you're saying, I feel comfortable with you.
That's true. That seems like an opportune moment to take a break from my discussion with Hamja Ahsan, which continues in episode 2 of Multiple O's.
Next week on Multiple O's.
I want to add now, before I sign off, that I had the realization that Hamja was not, in fact, the first person to bring the value of shyness to my attention. It came up in a discussion with the curator, Marianne Mulvey, who I spoke with on Resonance FM, the day before the O Show on Killer Conversations was filmed. In that discussion, which also revolved around shyness, Marianne highlighted the fact that in our society, shyness is most often framed as a problem to be overcome, and that this episode of my show was going to perpetuate that very message by, in effect, aiming to kill off shyness. It's not just a matter of my having a weak memory, but rather it's a testimony to how pervasive such messages from mainstream self-help culture are that I've struggled to see the benefits of shyness. Again, I'm really grateful to Hamja for reinforcing this point and helping me to see shyness in a new, more positive light. If you're still doubting its worth, all the more reason to listen to episode 2 of Multiple O's, where I'll continue to talk about shyness with Hamja Ahsan. Or better yet, go out and buy his book, Shy Radicals, published by Bookworks. See the episode notes for more details. Thanks again for listening. Bye now.
Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh.